with these changes and more work being outsourced from Big Pharma to CROs, it's apparent from what we've been saying is there needs to be this scientific connection between the two organisations. So, what kind of models are there out there that work for people, that make sure this information is flowing to the CRO and back from the CRO to the pharma? How does that work?
I think it's the onus is on the pharma-CRO relationship as you build that interaction to build the science across the two. And the need for the scientific interaction will vary from client to client from the CRO perspective. You'll have certain small biotech companies which will have less experience, will be more heavily wanting expertise from the CRO compared to a large pharma which may have lots of pre-existing expertise, and therefore you will be driven more by their scientific expertise. So that, I think the model is different depending on that particular client interaction for a CRO.
So I think what is disturbing to me is that I think scientists are scientists. It's very easy to have a conversation because we are scientists. The issue is that when you have a biotech CRO, the relationship also can be quite simple. As you get to the big pharma, relationship actually is a little bit more complex because it's not because a scientist, it's really a lot of time is driven by sourcing, and the idea that we mentioned before is a commodity, right? So as we as CRO build more capability and capacity knowledge base, and we have to do that in order to survive, but when something is being looked upon as a commodity, then there is sort of like a major gap in the thinking process, right? Because the scientist basically says, hey, this is tough. And sourcing says, no, this is $40. I mean, it's like, where is that conversation going, right? So it's, I think there has to be sort of some certain situation that scientists has to make decisions. And a lot of times in a big pharma, scientists are allowed to make the decisions, right? There's a whole conversation that should take place and need to take place, I think, as we mature as an organization, as a company, and the way that we as an industry behaves.
Yeah, as you have said, I really agree with you. Sometimes the biggest problem is to deal with the sourcing people. That's completely right. Because, of course, there are these master service agreements, and the sample price is fixed somewhere in the master service agreement. And then it comes to a new type of molecules, to a new family of molecules, which clearly requests more efforts in the method development. But then I think it's the responsibility of the bioanalytical scientists to convince sourcing, and to tell them, sorry, this will take longer. Even if we would do it in-house, it would take much longer. Time is money, so in-house we would have also a higher cost. And we have to pay this cost, this money to the CRO to give them the time to develop this assay in the right way. Because otherwise it will not work. If they are not paid for their time, then they cannot bring down the assay to the level we need. I think this is really, sometimes it might be a painful exercise for the bioanalytical scientist in a pharmaceutical company to go this way, to convince first this manager and then sourcing. But I think this has to be done sometimes when it comes to difficult assays or to novel assays for which the pharmaceutical company has no expertise.
Is the relationship with the CROs changing? Are you bringing them more within your own organisations? Are you involving them in information about what the drug is and getting them involved with project teams and getting a greater understanding of drug development rather than just that transactional thing? Here's some samples, can we have some data, here's $40.
Yes, I think that it has been changed in the last years, because in the past the technology was mainly, we can say, in big pharma But now with the reduction in size, there was a sort of migration of knowledge from big pharma to CRO. And now CRO are offering not only services to big pharma, but mainly also to biotech and so on, which are growing every day. So there is the need of knowledge of the development process, the entire development process of one compound. So all this knowledge that was within the big pharma in the past is now also in the CRO industry. So everything is, so the relationship between the pharma and CRO has been changed because all this knowledge is now also available in the CRO. So there is more an equal, so at the same level conversation, or in some cases, in case of small biotech, CROs behave as a consultant, and also for the project, for the development of the compound, from the candidate selection to the first time in man, providing the support, all the knowledge to do this piece of work. So I think in this case, the world is changing, and the trouble in the future is how to maintain in pharma, if the reduction size will continue, the knowledge in order to sourcing out properly the compound, to monitor properly the compound, because today the technology are still in the big pharma, but in the next years, what will happen? So maybe once these guys will retire, I don't know if they're all big pharma should hire from CRO, and the flow will be inverted. Otherwise, it could be a problem to really understand the issue that could happen in a different lab, which is outside your control. So this is another aspect that should be considered, I guess.
Does large molecule drive that interaction as well? It was just something that was said earlier, because you might capture with the target, you've got immunogenicity, so the measuring a large molecule depends on knowing its biology. I just wondered what that perspective was from your guys. Do you have more dialogue in the large molecule area than the small molecule area?
Cross-disciplinary activity, so you need to have those interactions across multiple disciplines for those kind of compounds, definitely.
We find that if it is just a fairly straightforward small molecule PK assay, the dialogue is very straightforward. There's not much going on, right? Because we've all been in business for a while. We look at the structure, we know what's going on. But when people ask us about LBA, when people talk about, I want the PK and PD, then the dialogue is very different, because the discussion is, the model is different, everything is different, and nobody knows what the PD data looks like, right? So the discussion is want to make sure that, hey, let's think through all the whole process. And so we are as invested as the pharma or the biotech, because we want to know what's going on, right? Because we become, quote unquote, real scientists again, so to speak.
So, I mean, how is this knowledge really moving from one place to another? The way I'm hearing it, it's sounding as if it's kind of quite passive, that there doesn't seem to be any active knowledge transfer from big pharma to CRO and vice versa, or am I missing something?
Well, some thought that was coming to my mind while I was hearing the dialogue is one of the things you're seeing now is CROs having roles specifically associated with how you build that scientific interaction. So you often hear people having a scientific director. Well, if you look 10 years ago in CROs, that was far more rare, and now you're seeing that, and that's about that scientific interaction, that scientific dialogue. So it's a tangible, visible way that CROs are responding to the need that's out there, because organizations, pharma organizations, are reliant on that scientific interchange.
What I found is that for the DMPK group, they're much more aligned with the sponsor, whether they're biopharma, big pharma, or virtual pharma, because the process, the goal is not how many samples you're going to do. The goal is, are you going to go into IND and what you need to get done? So the DMP group thinks very differently, behave very differently, and the requests coming from the sponsor is also very different.
Individuals from the CRO are actually on the project teams within the pharma. That is happening in the industry now.
I mean, if we consider the challenges we are facing now while developing complex drugs, I mean, one of the advantages of having an internal lab is the ability, the possibility to interact with the project team and to discuss the data and make sure that bioanalysis generates meaningful data. But if this cannot be done at the internal lab within Big Pharma, it has to be done at the CRO. The business model has to change completely. So it means that the CRO should be considered as an extension of the internal lab. And so, as such, be involved in the dynamics and in the communication with the project teams.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And we all know that the compounds are getting more complex. We all know that there should be as much interaction between the scientists of the CRO and the pharmaceutical companies as possible. But yet we see that the outsourcing department is still thinking it as a commodity. So because still we are sometimes not even paid for method development or validation. We have to do it for free, even when it's a very complex molecule. So there's some mismatch there in between the scientists and the outsource department, which is maybe not completely new and of all time, but it is troubling.
And indeed, an important point is communication. I think these are the three most important points in the cooperation between pharmaceutical companies and CROs. And the outsourcing monitors must have a feeling for what the CRO needs, which information they need. And they should deliver the information. Because if the CRO gets to know that a metabolite popped up too late, then they cannot address it. So all the information which pops up in the development of a new compound needs to be shared with the partner, with the CRO, if it's relevant for the assay. But this requires some experience on the side of the outsourcing monitor, that the outsourcing monitor knows, okay, I got information on my table which could be very relevant for the CRO. So I have to transfer this information very timely to the CRO and not wait for another 4 weeks.
Thank you all for your time. I think we'll draw the discussion to an end there and move on to hopefully getting a glimpse on that.